It is music that may shock you.
It is not.
This kid was a fan of my music, and he had my CD, The Darker Side.
But I still know in my heart that this was a good kid.
For me, that's going to be the hardest because we're never going to know.
This is a case that I read about years ago. There's a lot of information about it, yet it's rarely ever talked about despite it being one of the worst incidents. But that's why I'm here to talk about it. In this case, we're heading to Minnesota, and this is the case of Jeff Weise. Jeffrey James Weise was born on August 8, 1988 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His mother Joanne gave birth to him when she was only 18. His parents were from the Red Lake Indian Reservation in Red Lake, Minnesota. It was a poor area with a low employment rate. His parents separated before he was born, so his mother was the one taking care of him, until he was 3 months old. His mother was forced by her parents to give up Jeff. They told her to send him back to his father, Darrell Jr., who lived in Red Lake, which was over 200 miles away. But in June 1991, when Jeff was nearly 3 years old, he was back with his mother and were living back in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. A year later in 1992, his mother started dating a man who she eventually married in 1998. Joanne had 2 kids with him, so now Jeff wasn't the only child in the house. But his life didn't get any better. According to Jeff, he was physically and emotionally abused by his alcoholic mother, and when she started dating her new boyfriend, he too would abuse Jeff. Nearly 5 years later, on July 21st, 1997, back in Red Lake, Jeff's father was in a standoff with the Red Lake Police Department. His grandfather, Darrell Sr., was a sergeant in the tribal police force, so when he heard about his son, he tried to calm him down to prevent any casualties, but Jeff's father took his own life by shooting himself in the chest. It was said that this standoff lasted for a few days. Jeff was 8 years old when he had lost his father. There was no information as to why this altercation even occurred. People have asked, but there's no answer. March 5th, 1999, when Jeff was 10 years old, his mother got into a car accident. His mother and a cousin of hers crashed into a tractor trailer. The two were heavily intoxicated. The cousin did not survive, but Joanne did. She had suffered severe brain damage and was put in a rest home. Jeff was placed in the custody and care of his grandmother at the Red Lake Reservation. 2 of his aunts also helped in taking care of him. In 2000, Joanne had divorced her husband and completed their divorce in 2004. Their custody arrangements only covered the children they had together, not Jeff. Jeff didn't have a good relationship with his mother and hated living with her. He was very close to his grandparents, but unfortunately they separated as well. In 2003, Jeff's mother had recovered enough from her accident and regained speech. She was able to get a job and work part-time. She asked Jeff if he wanted to come back and live with her, but Jeff, remembering his abusive past, he preferred to stay with his grandmother. He was tired of having to go through the process of moving again. Jeff moved several times, which also meant he had gone to several different schools growing up. He attended 2 different elementary schools and stayed in one school in middle school. But in 2002, he had to repeat the 8th grade due to failing grades and never showing up the majority of the school year. Because of that, when he repeated his 8th grade year, he was enrolled in a special education program. But Jeff didn't have a good experience in school. Jeff would claim that his entire middle school years he would get bullied by other students frequently. This bullying would continue when he enrolled at Red Lake Senior High School in 2003. He would constantly get teased by other students because of his physical appearance. He was 6 feet tall, weighed 250 pounds, and wore nothing but black. But he wouldn't say anything back to his bullies, as he said, quote, "Because of my size and appearance, people don't give me as much trouble as they would if I looked weak." Students were also aware of his father's incident and his mother's accident and being put in a nursing home. It was never mentioned whether the students used that information to make fun of him. Some people say he didn't have many friends as he was always described as a loner, but some students reported that he had numerous friends. According to the friends he had, they said he wasn't violent. A very close friend of his described him as the only one I talked to about my problems. He was trustworthy and he was always capable of understanding what I was going through. Jeff even said this online in an internet forum. I try not to be aggressive in most situations. I'll use force if I have to, but I'm not about to go out and pick a fight. I'm mostly defensive. I'll defend myself if someone tries something, but other than that, I'm a peaceful person. However, that same close friend said that Jeff had a notebook that would contain drawings that were described as dark stuff, like people getting killed, hung, and swastikas. Yeah, keep that in mind because we'll get into that part later. Jeff would also rarely show up to school, but whenever he did show up, some teachers like his social studies teacher would say, Weise was a good listener like any other ordinary student. He was quiet but never a troublemaker. Another teacher described him as a pretty bright kid but lazy when it came to school. However, there were other teachers and students who said that Jeff had a history of troublesome behavior and had a history of getting into fistfights. His family has mentioned that he never got into a fistfight, so either he never did fight anyone or he never got caught doing so. And as I mentioned earlier, he rarely showed up to school, so a lot of students thought he was homeschooled. Jeff would go on to post his frustration online about how much he hated living in Red Lake and felt that his life was beyond his control. He expressed how much he hated the reservation. He described it as a place where people choose alcohol over friendship, where women neglect their own flesh and blood for relationships with men, where he could not escape the grave I'm continually digging for myself. Now it's 2004. There's a lot of stuff that happened this year, so bear with me and prepare yourself. In May of 2004, Jeff had attempted to end his own life. The first time was hanging with his belt and the second time by cutting his wrist downwards. From his first attempt, he ended up changing his mind, saying that this was not the path. However, he attempted the second time in the following month. His aunt sent him to the Red Lake Medical Center where he can be hospitalized and be away from the reservation. He received counseling and a prescription for Prozac, a medication to treat his depression. In October of that year, the FDA had issued a warning about the use of Prozac because of its association with more thoughts of suicide and violence, but it was the only antidepressant approved for use with children at the time. Prozac wasn't the only thing that helped Jeff with his depression. He had music to listen to. He was into rap, specifically horrorcore. Horrorcore, for those that are unfamiliar, is a subgenre of hip-hop based on dark and violent lyrics. Most notable is the Insane Clown Posse, or ICP for short. His friends have said that he was an obsessed fan of the genre. The two rappers that Jeff loved were Mars and Jimmy Don. Jeff would frequently visit Mars' website, the official Mars website, which is no longer available. On the website, Mars encouraged users to post about music, murder, and suicide on its forums. Jeff listened to Jimmy Don quite often and his favorite song was titled Game Over. The song was about shooting up a school and killing your bullies. Jeff was very active online and visited many websites where he shared a lot of his thoughts. Now, as for Jeff drawing swastikas, well, it was said by his friends and family that Jeff was heavily into Nazism. Family of his say that he would talk about it a lot, and I mean a lot. Jeff had visited several websites, and the first one we'll talk about is Above Top Secret, which is a discussion website. When I went to the website, I was hoping that I could come across Jeff's account, that is, if it hasn't been taken down already, and to my surprise, I found it. His username was his last name, Weise. He referred to himself as a free thinker. His account was created on December 21st, 2003. He had created 8 thread posts in total on 4 different forums. 1 on dreams and predictions, 4 on paranormal studies, 2 on cryptozoology, and 1 on secret societies. On January 13, 2004, Jeff created a post titled Past Lives. He talked about how he's into Nazism and wondered if he was a German soldier during World War II in his past life. He claims he's not a Nazi but felt a strong connection with both Europe and London. There were only 2 responses and both were regular responses telling him how he could find out. On November 3rd, 2004, Jeff created a post titled National Socialism and the Muslim SS. Jeff talked about Muslims that were Nazis and linked a website that is now gone, but thanks to the Wayback Machine, it took me to this. A website that talked about National Socialism does not equal racism and how different races can become Nazis and that they're treated with respect. Now, someone replied a bit concerned thinking Jeff was trying to promote Nazism, but Jeff replied that he isn't a Nazi and doesn't condone their actions. He just found the topic to be interesting and wanted to discuss it with others, and that's about it on here. His other posts were talking about mythical creatures and his personal experience with the paranormal. Now, Jeff would claim that he's not a Nazi when he was on Above Top Secret, but Jeff would say otherwise on the other website that Jeff would frequently visit. That website was the Libertarian National Socialist Green Party. The website is gone now, but I was able to go on it using the Wayback Machine. I wasn't, however, able to find his account. It was reported that on the website he went under the name Native Nazi and Todesengel, which is German for Angel of Death. He would talk about how he admired Hitler and believed in racial purity. On July 13, 2004, he had created a post on the website saying this: "The natives you known to be sympathetic to the cause are probably ones who've experienced firsthand what kind of problems cultural and race mixing can cause. As a result of cultural dominance and interracial mixing, there is barely any full-blooded natives left. Where I live, less than 1% of all the people on the reservation can speak their own language, and among the youth wanting to be black has run rampant. Under a national socialist government, things for us would improve vastly, and that is why I am pro-Nazi. It's hard though, being a Native American National Socialist. People are so misinformed, ignorant, and closed-minded it makes your life a living hell." If you remember earlier when I mentioned he posted online that he wasn't an aggressive person, well, this is the website that he posted that on. Now onto the next website. Jeff had created an account on a website called LiveJournal, which is a social networking service. Users can keep a blog, diary, or journal. Jeff had only made 3 posts. The first one was created on December 14, 2004. He doesn't say much. He introduces himself and promotes his band. He posted a link, but unfortunately, the link was not archived. On January 4, 2005, he creates a second post. This is where he starts talking about his depression, saying things like, "Right now, I feel as low as I ever have," and expresses his thoughts on ending his life again. On January 27, 2005, Jeff creates his third and final post, and here he expresses what people believe to be about his mother. So fucking naive, man. So fucking naive. Always expecting change when I know nothing ever changes. I've seen mothers choose their man over their own flesh and blood. I've seen others choose alcohol over friendship. I sacrifice no more for others. Part of me has fucking died and I hate this shit. I'm living every man's nightmare, and that single fact alone is kicking my ass. I really must be fucking worthless. This place never changes. It never will. Fuck it all. Now for the last website, Newgrounds. Some of you may be familiar with this website, but for those that aren't, Newgrounds is a popular entertainment website that users would post flash animations, games, and music. Jeff had an account there under the name of Regret, which was created on August 5th, 2004. He had 2 flash animations here. One titled Clown that was created on October 28, 2004, and the other titled Target Practice, which was created on October 2nd, 2004. It was suspected that he had another account under the name Psycho666. The account says they're from Minnesota, but says he goes by Psych and is 32, not 16 like his real age. But looking at his reviews and posts on his profile, there are only 2 things that could link that this was indeed Jeff. When clicking on reviews, he left one review talking about a game that was referencing World War II and getting upset about it. We all remember how obsessed he was with World War II and the German soldiers. The other one is when you clicked on the post tab, he mentions that he's a Nirvana fan, and if you remember his LiveJournal account, his profile picture is the band Nirvana. The account contains 2 Flash games. One is titled The Hitman, which was created on January 31st, 2003. The other is called Pigeon Hunter, which was created on July 24, 2004. He created his Flash animations and games on a website he created called Infected Eyes. Now, let's take a look at his animations and games. The first we'll look at is Clown. It's hard to get the comments that were posted back in 2004, but thanks to the YouTube channel titled Red Lake Archive, they provided the comments that were left on his post. There were a few comments, mostly being positive, but there was one where a user said, quote, "I don't know who you are or why you made this Flash, but you should seek help." According to the Red Lake Archive, he had a Flash animation titled Gangland that was created on April 1st, 2003. I wasn't able to find it. Luckily, the channel was able to provide it, so here it is. As for his 2 Flash games, they were pretty basic games. Pigeon Hunter, you play as a man who shoots birds in the air. Hitman, you kill people who are in debt by the mafia. Again, basic. These are the games I remembered back in the day. They both got neutral feedback. But now, it's time for his most infamous Flash animation, Target Practice. This animation did cause concern among the users in Newgrounds. One user posted, "Was this like a warning message? Dude, you need help badly." And Jeff didn't take this comment well. His response was this: "You obviously can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. Don't try judging my mental health based upon a simple animation, capiche?" We're in early 2005 now, and Jeff's depression was severely getting worse. He still lived with his grandma and getting care from his aunts. A doctor had increased his dosage on February 21st to 60 milligrams. His 2 aunts were concerned about the increase in his dosage. Jeff was still obviously sad about losing his dad, but now looked up to him as he considered his dad to be brave for ending his own life. In the afternoon on March 21st, 2005, Jeff was at his grandfather's home and grabbed his .22 caliber gun from his room. No one knew how long he had possession of it, but a friend of his suspected Jeff had it for over a year. After grabbing his gun, he shot and killed his grandfather, 58-year-old Daryl Lucier Sr., while he was asleep in bed. He shot him 10 times in the chest and twice in the head. Daryl's girlfriend, 32-year-old Michelle Sagana, was coming up the stairs from the basement with laundry, and Jeff shot her in the head twice, killing her instantly. Jeff then takes his grandfather's bulletproof vest, his gun belt, and took 2 of his weapons, a .40 caliber Glock 22 and his 12-gauge shotgun. He then got in his grandfather's police cruiser and drove to his high school. He parked right at the entrance of the school, arriving at 2:45 p.m. When he passed through the building's main entrance, he was confronted by 2 of the school's security guard, one of them being 28-year-old Derek Brunn. Derek was unarmed and was manning the school's metal detector. Jeff gunned him down and left him dead. This gave the other security guard a chance to run and alert the students. As Jeff walked through the metal detectors, he began to fire down the hallway. Jeff went inside to the first classroom in sight, which was an English classroom. There he shot English teacher 62-year-old Neva Rogers, but she didn't die there. After shooting her, he turns and started spraying at the children, killing 3 students. Neva Rogers then runs to the next classroom, a math classroom. She wasn't able to get inside as the door was locked, and this allowed Jeff to kill her while she was begging to be let in. Jeff tried to get in the classroom but wasn't able to. Instead, he got in by shooting the glass panel on the side and squeezing his way through. Students and the teacher were lined up against the wall crouching. Weise approached Missy Dodds, the math teacher, and pulled the trigger, but he ran out of bullets in that gun. This allowed Red Lake student Jeff May to rush Weise and was able to stab him with a pencil, but Weise pushed him off, grabbed another weapon, and shot May twice in the neck and once in the jaw. Thankfully, his bravery had allowed many students to flee the classroom uninjured. Around 2:52 p.m., Jeff Weise returned to the main entrance where he kills 2 more students and injured 2 more. Jeff had allegedly asked the student, "Do you believe in God?" The quote comes from one of the Columbine shooters that asked the student the same question. It was also said by students that Jeff was waving and smiling as he was shooting at the students. Jeff returned to the school's main entrance. Within minutes, a team of 4 tribal police and conservation officers rushed in front of the school, forming a tactical diamond formation, and were able to confront Jeff. Jeff didn't hesitate and fired at the officers as he ran back inside the school. According to an FBI agent, the shootout lasted about 4 minutes. Jeff was struck in his hip, right leg, and right arm. He retreated to the now empty math classroom where Jeff sat down, leaned against the wall, pointed the shotgun under his chin, and just like the title of his favorite song, it was game over. The shooting left many people devastated. The chairman of the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians, Floyd Buck Jourdain Jr., stated that the shooting was, quote, "one of the darkest and most painful occurrences in the history of our tribe." It took a few hours for police to show up at Jeff's grandfather's home to find him and his girlfriend's body. The police took Jeff's computer, and that's when it was discovered of his fascination with Nazism and his frequent visits to the websites related to them. Someone on Reddit had obtained photocopies of his room that was released by the FBI just a few weeks ago as I'm recording this. Here are the photos. Floyd's son was arrested just days later on March 28th and charged with conspiracy. He was charged because he exchanged several emails with Jeff which involved plans for the shooting. The charge was eventually dropped but pled guilty to transmitting threatening messages through the internet. One of the injured victims, 15-year-old Cody Thunder, remembers when the shooting began. He immediately recognized the popping sounds as gunfire. He was sitting in the front row and remembers vividly when Jeff's face appeared through the door's window. Cody recalls that Jeff aimed his pistol right at him and fired. A bullet crashed through the glass into Cody's hip. Cody's cousin Lance was struck in the arm and pretended to be dead. Cody says he had tried to befriend Jeff and talked to him several times. He said Jeff looked like a cool guy but talked, quote, nothing but guns and shooting people, but he never imagined that one day he would turn on his fellow classmates. Jeff May tells his experience. Surprisingly, May was able to make a full recovery from his neck injuries. He still remembers that day very well. I can still imagine it. I can still hear. I can still taste the blood. He had a crush on one of his victims, Alicia White, and mentioned how he saw his crush die right in front of him, saying, "The girl I wanted died in that room." Missy Dodd said she never returned to the school after the shooting and has quit teaching completely. Jeff's family was in pain as they themselves couldn't believe it. His extended Lucier family had been involved for years in trying to mentally help him by providing care and getting him psychiatric treatment for depression. 1 month after the incident, there was a memorial fund that received $200,000 in donations from across the country to pay the funeral services for all the victims. $5,000 was given to Jeff's family to be able to pay for his funeral and burial. Many people were against his family receiving any of the money, but the tribal leaders said that they had a double burden as they not only lost a family member, but they also have to deal with the fact that their family member caused this incident. Jeff's family was interviewed 3 days later after the shooting.
A remote, reclusive community in northern Minnesota, the Red Lake Reservation has cut itself off even more since the shootings. The anguish of the 5,000 or so Ojibwe Indians who live here has been mostly kept from the public. The media has been denied free access. We were offered one glimpse of a community's distress with the extended Lucier family, mourning both a victim and the perpetrator.
I was really flabbergasted.
Tom Lucier's brother, Darrell, longtime reservation cop, was victim number one in the rampage of Darrell's grandson, 17-year-old Jeffrey Weise.
And between these two was nothing but a warm grandfatherly relationship?
Yeah, they got along good. He was a good role model for all the kids on the reservation, not just ours, yeah. He had a good rapport with my grandsons, yeah.
All day, visitors came in a steady stream to console the stunned family.
The whole reservation and our families are going to ask why. And to me, that's going to be the hardest because we're never going to know. We're not making up any excuses or trying to, sugarcoat anything. It's just a very tragic thing that happened, and it couldn't have been prevented.
Shauna and Tammy Lucier lost their father and nephew in an incident Tammy says they could never have anticipated.
He never showed us the violent side of him. That's why it's so hard for us to understand this. He never acted out, never got in a fist fight with anybody.
They described a kid who liked listening to Johnny Cash and the Beatles, but they also say his father's suicide, his mother's car accident that left her brain damaged amid other turmoil, may have accounted for bouts of depression. Once they caught him cutting himself.
And we went to the emergency room with all the right people to try to get him some help. And the doctor there told us that that was a fad. He's seeing a lot of that.
And sent
him home.
Despite the tribe's isolation, his aunts insist he got the same care he'd have received anywhere in the U.S.
We've gone through all of the channels, all the right people to see, all the right medications, so we thought.
What kinds of medications was he on?
Just
Do you happen to know the names
Prozac
of the pills?
for depression.
Prozac.
And he was taking this all the way until the other day.
Yep.
Actually, they had just recently upped his dosage.
They did know he was interested in Nazi material. Reports have said Weise had posted messages and drawings on websites, including one for the Libertarian National Socialist Green Party. His family simply wrote it off to a bright, eccentric child.
He would just make little comments about the Nazis in general.
He knew a lot about him. You know, I mean, he was very informative. If something came up on TV, or you know, he was very intellectual. You know, and
about Nazi history and
just in general, in talking. You know, just he had a way with words. You know, and most of his vocabulary is above college.
As families grieve here, Red Lake has seen an outpouring of sympathy and offers of help from outside the reservation, from grief counselors to prayer services. This one...
Eventually, both horrorcore rappers Jimmy Dawn and Mars were on the news since Jeff was known to be a fan of the two.
A sad picture of Jeff Weise is emerging tonight. When he killed himself after yesterday's rampage, he seemed to be in the midst of depression and despair. Nothing like the happy little boy his aunt remembers.
But I still know in my heart that this was a good kid. I don't know what happened.
The nephew Kim Desjardins knew as a little boy saw his world begin to crumble when his father committed suicide. Jeff Weise was only 8 then. 2 years later, his mother suffered serious brain damage in a car accident.
When his mom got into the car accident, he was sent back to live in Red Lake.
Jeff's mom left Bloomington today to go to Red Lake for her son.
He didn't have a voice to say, I don't want to be here, I'd rather be back with my mom.
Kim thinks that loss of control may have led Jeff down a destructive path. A Nazi website lists numerous postings by him under the name Native Nazi. His best friend says he was obsessed with music called horrorcore. His favorite musician, Mars, and a song called Go Suicidal. Classmates describe Jeff's gruesome drawings.
Drawings of people hanging there dead, drawings of dead bodies, drawings of people killing people.
2 of the last entries in Jeff's online journal show the inner thoughts of a troubled soul. He writes, "Right now I feel about as low as I ever have. I'm starting to regret sticking around. I should have taken the Razor Blade Express last time around." Another possible warning sign, classmates say a skeleton drawing by Jeff Weise hangs in the school with these words, "March to the death song till your boots fill with blood." Don?
It is music that may shock you.
It is not sold in many stores, but its dark, disturbing lyrics are striking a chord with Minnesota teenagers. Tonight, Darcy Pollan digs deep into the world of horrorcore. A warning, some of the music and some of the images are offensive.
I talk about a lot of crazy stuff that offends a lot of people.
A song about fantasizing murder or the death of somebody, yeah, I consider that horrorcore.
I have no responsibility for my lyrics. It's just fun. It's fun and games. It's horrorcore.
Fun and games? Or disturbing and dangerous?
I think it's garbage in and garbage out, and I would be very concerned if my teenager was listening to it.
Horrorcore music, a type of underground rap which centers on violence and death.
The first rap I ever wrote was about suicide.
Mars is a successful horrorcore artist from the Bay Area of California.
My music is basically a cross between a horror movie and gangster rap. You take Stephen King or Wes Craven, and you throw them on a rap beat, that's who I am.
Jimmy Dawn is a St. Paul rap musician who also sings horrorcore songs.
This genre popped up for people like me. A lot of kids who don't, I would say, who don't have a lot of friends or are misunderstood.
Kids like Jeffrey Weise, the Red Lake Reservation shooter. Some who knew him say Mars and Jimmy Dawn were among Weise's favorites.
They were just saying that this kid was a fan of my music, and he had my CD, The Darker Side, and he listened to the song Game Over and the letter a lot, and he mentioned it as one of his favorite songs.
I wonder what I did to deserve this rejection.
Game Over is a song about a school shooting.
I think I started writing that when I was about 14.
Today I go to school for the last time in my life, holding tight to the pistol that I have to my side. Can't wait to see the faces as they stare down the barrel.
I was sitting in class and I was looking at certain kids that I couldn't stand that were making every day really hard, like a personal hell for me. And I would fantasize about what it'd be like if I came in with a gun, which kids I would let live and which kids I would kill.
That was years before Columbine or Red Lake. After the Minnesota school shooting, Jimmy Don got threatening emails from loved ones of the shooter and his victims.
One of them said that he should have killed me for making the music that I do. Another one said that I should be disgusted with myself for fueling children to do this.
Both rappers say their music doesn't cause violence.
I'm hearing whispers in the dark. Listen to the demons. I ain't a preacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm definitely not a role model.
I don't encourage anybody to hurt themselves or anybody else.
But those who work with troubled teens say tunes like these can cause even more discord in children already on the edge.
When I see adolescents, particularly those that are depressed, that are suicidal, homicidal, music like that reinforces their thinking, reinforces their distortion that whatever they are thinking is normal.
Even so, musicians and counselors agree the ultimate responsibility for preventing young people from destructive behavior lies with responsible adults.
I feel no responsibility. I think it's the responsibility of the community.
I'm not advocating that we suppress freedom of speech. What I am advocating is that parents need to be involved.
Jimmy Don, a father of 3, and Mars, dad to 2 girls, say they are in tune with protecting their own children.
I don't let my kids listen to my music because I'm a parent.
Well, Mars tells Darcy he wears that mask for 2 reasons. He says it is part of the sinister image that he likes to maintain. It also, he says, hides his identity from those who may harm him and his family. He says he is very protective of his little girls.
In 2005, before the shooting had occurred, Mars released an album titled Mars Attacks. It was sold out quickly, and when he got a lot of attention from the media, he was signed by a record label and re-released his album, adding the song called Heartless, which was a response to the media accusing him to be the cause of the shooting, while also rapping about the incident itself. If you want to listen to it, the link to the song will be down in the description below. Surprisingly, the Green Party website that Jeff visited had made a response to the incident just 1 day after the shooting. The administrator described Jeff as highly intelligent and contemplative, and as we remember, his family said something similar, that he had a college-level vocabulary. To summarize the entire post, they said the shooting itself is not our failure, society is our failure, and the school shooting is a symptom. Some people briefly blame the 2003 film Elephant, which is about a school shooting. Jeff had watched it 17 days prior to the shooting. A friend of Jeff said that Jeff brought the movie when he went over to a friend's house and skipped the parts where the 2 students planned and committed the school shooting. Jeff and the rest of his friends talked about the film, but said Jeff did nothing to anyone suspect what he was planning. His games and flash animation on Newgrounds received a lot of views, which resulted in a lot of negative comments and downvoting his post. Both of his accounts are still up. The link to both will also be in the description below. Users in Above Top Secret created a post talking about the username Weise was the perpetrator in the Red Lake shooting, linking his account and the thread post titled School Scare. The post was created on May 13, 2004, where this user discussed that a student at his school was suspended after police found that the student had a hit list of over 100 students at his school. Jeff replied with his long post. He described how people believed he was going to shoot up the school on April 20th of 2004 based on the way he dresses and because people knew his obsession with Nazism and Columbine. Nazism because of Hitler's birthday, which was on 4/20, and Columbine, which took place on the same day in 1999. Going back to Jeff's account on his website, I read all of his posts, and his first thread post titled Weird Dreams caught my attention. In it, he talks about a weird dream he had and asks people if they think it meant anything symbolic. The user, Masked Avatar, made a response saying this: "This is how it resonates with me. The black dog is an event you have coming up, probably major. It is running towards you. Running represents time. To shoot is to prepare adequately for the event. The machine gun is probably friendly support that is there to get you ready for the event." Reading this at first may seem like nothing, and others may feel the same, but to me, when I read this and knowing what Jeff did, it was definitely unsettling. This post was created a year and a half before the shooting took place. Oh, and the last time Jeff logged into his account, March 21st, 2005. At the time, this shooting was considered to be one of the deadliest shootings since Columbine. It's now considered the 4th deadliest shooting behind Columbine, University of Texas shooting, and the Virginia Tech massacre. For a while, no one knew what his motive really was, but people have speculated it was due to the loss of his father, his upbringing, the constant bullying, and his depression. In total, 10 people lost their lives that day, and still leaves a nasty scar in Red Lake and the victims affected by it. Also, don't forget about Mars, because this isn't the last time we're going to hear from him. Wait, while editing this video, I discovered something. Remember the channel I brought up, Red Lake Archive? Turns out it belonged to a school shooter. I'll make a video about it one day.